Remind me, it had to be what, like 10 to 15 minutes, I think.
I think it was just 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can make me co-host Ben if you want, and I can screen record too, just in case it doesn't work.
Okay. How do I do that?
You can, I think it's you go to members.
You can just like click on mine.
Yeah. And then it should like let Andre be there should be an option that's like promote to co-host or something.
Hold on.
Maybe the host.
Okay. That's fine. Yeah. Andre, but wait, now Ben can't record, right?
It says I'm recording right now.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, I see it. Okay. We'll just need to cut this out once we send it. That's fine.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So I guess we can go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and comment first on something that I thought was really interesting about the story is sort of how the narration is done. It's really unconventional in terms of I did think it was interesting where it was like the Kite Runner, where in the beginning, sort of, it talks about, it gives you like just a brief synopsis of an incident. And then you are kind of working your way up to that incident all the way throughout the course of the story. But I think that what was cool about the narration is it was like a third person omniscient narrator, but it was switching back and forth between perspectives. So like just whenever you got to a certain point in one story, it ends up switching to either another thing that's happening at the same moment or another flashback that gives you a little bit more insight about the characters. And I thought that that was really cool because that's obviously not something that you see in most stories.
Yeah. I liked it so far. I just thought it was kind of slow at the beginning
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like out of the first like 100 pages we've read, not a lot has happened.
It has been very slow, but I feel like it's
leading up to the one like hockey game, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's like it's been really good, but it's kind of like very slow in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think, in my opinion, some of that slowness sort of attributes to more character development.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that that's why the story moves so slow, because at the same time, although we're what, like 100 something pages in, and we've only seen time, like real time, progress like a day or so. There are so many different backstories that we've seen in terms of what we're looking at. You know, we've looked at the troubled relationship between Kira and Peter. And we've looked into the story of Kevin and his upbringing and how basically at the same time he has everything and where in terms of material resources, but his parents also never pay him a lick of attention. And we look into the story of Amat and his family and how they end up dealing with things. And then we look at the town we look at the town of old and how it at one point in time reached hockey greatness whenever they got second place in the Swedish championship or whatever. So I think that those backstories, while also moving the story along a lot slower, provide so much more character depth and analysis. I mean, I can see like so many of the characters are more three-dimensional than they would be if the story had just kind of started at a certain point and progressed from there.
Yeah, I thought it was just kind of like I noticed how like Amat really just kind of contradicts the whole thing Kevin is. Like they're both like amazing at what they do, like at hockey, but how Kevin has everything he really needs, but like he doesn't have his family as much at like his games and stuff. And then Amat is kind of the complete opposite, where he isn't as like wealthy, but he knows he'll have his mom's support like no matter what with hockey. And then like towards the end of the reading when she saw him on the rink with the junior team and she was like so proud and she was like, oh, at this moment like my back like really pain, like I felt like I could like run or whatever. We just kind of I thought that was kind of interesting that we saw them just kind of like complete opposites but like similar in the connection to like hockey.
I have something interesting I like to talk about. So when Soon talks about finding a great once in a lifetime player, he says he's experienced it twice and that it's like a cherry blossom. Why do you think he picked a cherry blossom? to kind of describe this?
I think it's because of sort of the unique beauty of a cherry blossom. I mean, you see other plants, none of them will ever come close to how pretty a cherry blossom looks in full bloom. And so I think that that's sort of why, because when you look at the development of players and even Soon's philosophy throughout the story, that's where he differs from David, and that's why the organization wants him fired, because he believes that player development is a process and it should be longer and more drawn out um, because he knows that if you put players with an age group above them too quickly and they're not mature enough to deal with it, then obviously they won't bloom right. And so I think that that's why he looks at the cherry blossom, because it's something unique and something recognizable. But at the same time, you think about the time it takes a cherry blossom to bloom. I mean, sometimes you may not recognize it until it has bloomed. And, that's whenever he was looking at players, like he had, whenever he was looking at Amat for the first time practicing, or not for the first time, but for the first time, he'd really noticed that he would be that same skill level as Kevin is and as Peter was. He had said that he'd seen this boy thousands of times out on the ice, but he had just never recognized his talent. Sometimes it takes a while to realize that, just like it takes a while to realize a cherry blossom is a cherry blossom until it blooms.
I just thought it was weird. Like, if Soon was so kind of like up on this idea of not like letting people kind of play up,
Mm-hmm.
like why would he have like put this sticky note in David's office, like kind of
Yeah.
telling him like about Amat and like kind of pursuing this idea of Amat playing up on the junior team if he was so like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he was just trying to like kind of save his job and like I don't know. I'm kind of confused why he did that when he wouldn't really let people play up on the A team when he
Well, I think he realized the magnitude that it would bring to the city. So you guys, I can't remember. My book's formatted a little bit differently, so it took me like probably 20 more pages to realize that I was reading ahead. You guys got to the story about what's his name, like Robbie or whatever, the guy that works at the factory. I think that's his name.
I got to the point where Peter is in the bar with that one lady. I'm trying to remember her name.
Okay. Did you get to the story? Did you get to the part as to why he as to why he failed at hockey?
yeah. I know my wrong,
Yeah.
but like he
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
kind of
That's in my opinion the reason as to kind of why Soon is so strict about it, because he realizes his downfall as sort of the reason that he wasn't good is because they put him with the A team. The sponsors forced him up there because he was so phenomenal. And then he just ended up, he wasn't physically strong enough, or mentally for that matter. Once the crowd started to boo him, he ended up leaving the games, and he just couldn't deal with the physical and the mental pressure that the sport brought. And I think that this time around Soon realized, because it's talked about so much throughout the story, how demanding of a game hockey is and how it only demands your all. And a victory, it's more than just a game, because if there's a victory, then the new hockey academy comes to Beartown, and then comes jobs, and then the economy, and then finally maybe the people can win over the forest. So I think that that's whenever he realizes that sometimes you do have to change your game plan a little bit, because there are some circumstances that require a little bit more than just the status quo.
I also think a part of it, I know they briefly mentioned this, is strategy, because they're talking about in the game how those guys from the city they were going to face were so much faster and bigger, and they were talking about how I think Bobo couldn't keep up. Like, he was a strong player, but he could not keep up. And it's mentioned several times that Amat is very fast. So I wonder if it was also kind of from a strategy point. Uh, on top of that, I think Soon kind of saw how tough he was. Looks like you mentioned, was it Robbie was not mentally strong enough to handle it, whereas Mott's come from nothing. He's tough.
Mm-hmm.
He's willing to work hard for his mother, so he's not going to give up easily. So Soon also realizes that.
Mm-hmm. And you see that toughness shown in his first junior practice as well.
yeah.
I mean, that was a real turning point for him in the story, whenever it felt like, because I think that just defines Amat's character right there. I mean, you look at you look at his situations, what he has. I mean, he really only has his relationship with his mother. Like, he doesn't have hardly any material possessions. He doesn't have hardly any friends. I mean, he gets bullied at school by the juniors all the time. And then even whenever he joins the junior team, he still gets bullied a substantial amount. And that's whenever you can kind of see him in this moment of near lifelessness, where he's laying on the floor bleeding, having a hard time even getting up. And that's whenever he finally makes his move and ends up beating Bobo in the one-on-one drill and hitting the shot. I think that's where Amat thrives, is under pressure, because he's lived his entire life under pressure. And that's how his character has been developed. There's never been a moment in his life that's been easy for him. And that's why I think that he's more built for this moment than somebody like Robbie might be.
What I also thought interesting is when, Bobo was obviously enraged that someone as small as Amat got past him, how Benji, usually his defense, Kevin, comes over and defends Amat. I thought that was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm interested to see where this story regresses, because how Benji's going to react, because I have a sneaking suspicion that Kevin is going to be up to no good here. Alex, remember he asked about Maya?
Yeah.
I think something might be going down here soon. So it'll be interesting if that does happen, where Benji's loyalty will lie.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, and Benji has even expressed a little bit of interest in Anna as well, I think. So that could be interesting, compelling as well. I think that's 10 minutes. I've been looking at my clock. I think we started at 17 and now it's 10:28. So we should be good to stop recording.
All right, I'll stop.